welcome to Retro Warriors episode 463. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by viable human Chris Saturn.
Hi, Justin.
Hi, is Saturn short for Saturnalia?
It is, yes.
Oh, okay.
I eat babies.
It's your... Pablo, can you clip that out? I want that to be my message ringtone for when Saturn texts me. I eat babies.
I would like it known that I tested my mute button.
Okay.
And it worked. It was very exciting.
You bought that mute button, didn't you?
No, I didn't get the physical mute button.
Oh, okay.
I just tested my normal ass mute.
The one that's been not working. Yep.
Yeah, and I was able to blow my nose during our silence, and you could not hear it. It was great.
Amazing. I'm so happy for you.
We're professionals.
My week has been almost no video games. I've just been real busy. It's a busy time of year for me. My wife has been
busy having gunfights.
Yeah, so I talk about it more extensively on an upcoming Talking Wizards. I think when this episode goes live, it'll be coming out a few days later. So if you're on the Patreon, then you don't have long to wait, just a few days. But I bought a bunch of Nerf guns.
Yeah.
And when I say Nerf guns, I mean not the brand Nerf, because Nerf is the shitty brand now. And there are other brands that are much better than Nerf. And
nice.
So I bought them initially, I spent a few bucks and they're super cheap. Like I got like a big pump action shotgun with a 40 dart drum, and it was like $17. And it works amazing, and it shoots twice as hard as any Nerf gun you've ever owned.
Nice.
And so I bought a few of those. And then I went to the store, to Walmart, and I was going to buy more foam darts, like a little refill, because I needed more. And we go down the dart aisle, and they have these like Pro Series guns. Pardon me, blasters. You're not supposed to call them guns, Saturn. Did you know this?
Oh, my bad.
They have Pro Series blasters that shoot at like 200 FPS, clearanced out for $9.
Huh.
So I'm like, I bought those. So I've got this.
Because they're deadly?
Oh my God. Me and my daughter shot each other with them and they left welts. So I went to the company's website and they sell a weaker spring for it so that it doesn't like blow a hole in you. Yeah.
Your daughter's going to go back to school and they're going to be like, what happened to you? What are your parents doing?
But after doing some Googling, I learned that most Nerf guns shoot around 70 FPS.
Now, FPS...
Yeah.
What? Describe to me... It's not frames per second because there are no frames in reality.
Feet per second.
All right. You needed to explain that. This is a show that doesn't regularly talk about Nerf guns.
And so all the stuff I bought is 90 and above.
Okay.
And the upside of that is that these things shoot real good. You know, like when you were a kid and you'd have a Nerf gun fight and you'd be like, ha, and you go to shoot your friend with a Nerf gun and it would just like sploot out like 2 feet and arc and land on the floor and you're like, oh. Well,
no,
I guess
the Nerf guns that we had were from the 80s, and they would basically decapitate someone.
Oh no, they're terrible now. They're trash garbage.
I see.
And so I've been doing Nerf battles with my kid. I've been doing Nerf battles outside.
Nice.
We set up. I have little pop-up deer blinds, and we set them up outside for little bases. And I have like a pallet turned over for like a little barricade. It looks like a little shitty paintball arena in my front yard now.
Nice.
And so I've been spending a lot of time doing it. It's been nice because it gets us outside. It's like exercise. I have to move my body around, so that's kind of nice. I did play a bit of Balatro, still just kind of slowly pecking away at it. I feel like everyone else in the Discord has like busted the game wide open, and I'm still over here like, I made it to the third ante, you know. Although Guy is behind me. I think he finally in the chat the other day was like, I played a round of Balatro for the first time, and I was like, oh, you sweet summer child.
No, he won a round for the first
time. Oh, he won one. All right. Still, I've won more than one. I've won 4 rounds of Balatro total ever, which is pretty good, Saturn. Don't tell me how many you've won, please. Just let me.
Well, I couldn't. I've lost track. It is a lot.
Just let me bask in it, please. Just let me have this. But not a lot of video games. It's just been busy in my house. My wife was working insane overtime at work lately, so that finally just ended as of today. So hopefully life is less nuts in our house for a little bit because
Your
you know.
Nerf talk unlocked some forgotten memory in my mind of when I was a little kid and we would go to my grandparents' house, and if we happened to go there during the day, which was rare, they would always try to get us to go outside and play.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any toys or anything.
Yeah.
And one time my cousin had brought her Nerf guns,
Mhm.
and they were so upset with us that we would play Nerf at their house because that was violent and rowdy. So instead, they went into their garage and got out their outdoor play kit, which was a croquet set and lawn darts.
Aren't lawn darts just big sharp spears you throw at each other?
Correct. Yes. Well, you don't throw them at each other. You're supposed to throw them into the ground.
But I mean,
and hit
you
the
do.
target.
You do throw them at each
Right.
other.
So they were upset that we were playing Nerf, so they pulled out the lawn darts, the giant metal lawn darts. Anyway,
Their outdoor play set.
right?
Oh my god. No,
Yeah.
that's terrible. That sucks.
Yeah. Anyway, so they re-released Braid as an anniversary collection,
Oh.
and when I saw it, I was like, I'm not going to get this. It's literally the same game.
Right.
It looks identical to me. I'm struggling to see the difference between the original and this one looking side by side. And then I noticed that it had some new levels. And I was like, well, that's the part that I enjoy about Braid. I like the little
the levels?
puzzly levels. I don't want the the fart huffing. I want
Yeah.
the gameplay. And so I did pick it up because it was on sale on my Xbox, and I'm replaying that. I'm remembering that I do enjoy Braid. It's a good game. It's a fun little puzzle game. I can't find the new content. I don't know where it is. It is the same game.
Yeah.
And so I looked up where is the new content. It's developer commentary levels where he huffs his farts at you.
Oh man. Thanks, Jonathan Blow. We love it.
I have not gotten to the new content yet.
I didn't like Braid because of I know this is like the least popular opinion. I hated the art style.
I have nothing
hate
against
it.
the art
I
style.
don't
It's
know.
weird and
It's definitely weird.
uncomfortable.
It's a little
but
unnerving. Look, it's
fine.
like a little salad fingers looking to me. You know what I mean?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. It is weird looking, and it's not an art style that I enjoy, but it doesn't detract from the game for me.
Yeah, it did. I don't know what it was.
I do
was
like the
just
soundtrack
"Ugh."
though, but the soundtrack is not original. It's just some music that they purchased the licenses for.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I also started checking out Chants of Sinar.
Okay.
Because it came to Game Pass, and it was something that was kind of on my radar anyway. But now I don't have to explicitly buy it first. So, it is kind of a puzzly, adventure-y game where you don't speak the same language as the NPCs in the game.
Oh, so kind of like a Fox game Tunic.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of, except for in this one, you explicitly have to decipher what they're saying.
Oh, all
You
right.
don't just figure it out as you go along.
Yeah.
So like if you see them like gesturing to something and they say something, you can guess that, oh, that might mean water or river.
Right.
But then it gives you like a drop down where you can see all the random gibberish they've said and a collection of possible words it might mean, and you can put them together, and then the next time they say it, it'll like translate it for you.
oh.
But if you were wrong, then you got a bad translation.
Oh.
And you occasionally go into new areas where they speak different languages. It's kind of like a Tower of Babel situation where like
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
different people who speak different languages are in this thing.
Mhm.
And I'm really digging on it, trying to piece together what is what and figuring out the languages and moving on to the new areas. And then it threw a forced stealth section at me.
Mm.
And it has no place in this game. It does not belong there.
I don't know what the fuck is the obsession. If
Right.
you are someone listening and you're
Uh-huh.
like, I love the forced stealth sections in games, please contact us because I need to know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, seriously.
And I need to know why these people keep putting. I was playing Ayuden Chronicle and I hit the
Mhm.
forced stealth section.
yeah,
And I was like,
I don't.
this is the dumbest thing ever. Also, it sucked. And then I was looking at Sandland because it came out,
Mhm.
and I played the demo, and I was like, that's kind of fun. And then I go to the reviews and people are like, lengthy forced stealth section. And I was like, not for $60. No, thank you.
I don't
pass.
So if anyone out there is a game developer, why?
Yeah, explain to us. You can also write in and please tell us what the fuck is your problem.
Why does everyone need a forced stealth section? And also, I just wanted to take a moment to bitch about EA.
Yeah,
as a
okay,
company.
please go ahead. I think if there's anywhere on the internet you can bitch about EA, it's here.
Yeah. So they apparently had some sort of glitch the other day that removed a bunch of purchased games from people's libraries.
Uh-huh.
And I lost several of my games in this glitch. And I got no notification from them that it was fixed. It just, somebody in our Discord said, "Oh, it was a glitch. You should check again." And I still had lost everything. But then I checked several hours later, and some of my things are back, and not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things is just gone permanently. And the notification in their dumb bullshit EA app is, "This game is no longer available for purchase or sale on our store."
Thanks.
No
Can I have
refund,
my game, please?
no, like, this is how you can get to it. No, here it is on an alternate marketplace. Just, no, sorry, it's gone now. Goodbye. And when I was looking into it, it looks like this was some sort of disconnect between Game Pass and EA Play, which is their dumb bullshit subscription service. Which is frustrating.
Used to be included in Game Pass Ultimate? Or
it is still included in Game Pass
okay.
Ultimate. It's just there was a disconnect between Microsoft and EA's servers. But the problem I have is I didn't have these games through EA Play. These are things that I had purchased physical boxed copies of and redeemed on Origin when that was still a thing. And now, therefore, have them on EA. But because of this disconnect with Game Pass, my purchased licenses were revoked.
Oh, how nice. How nice for you, Saturn.
Yeah, and they have since been reinstated, but that just makes me worried of, if I cancel Game Pass, do I then lose my purchases?
The answer is that in time we will all lose all of our purchases.
Right. Exactly.
Right? That's the answer, I think.
Yeah, it's just fuck EA. I don't know why anyone gives them money. I have not given them money in some time, and I am still getting fucked over by them.
Yeah, I can't. I was trying to think of the last. Every now and then I'll buy like something on a GOG sale for like $1. Right. That's like EA.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
you know,
I did buy Dungeon Keeper.
Yeah, I think I bought Dungeon Keeper. I think I paid $2 for it or something. You know, but I couldn't imagine paying them $70 for a new game.
No, good Lord, no.
But let's do the news, and I'm sure we won't have to talk about that anymore.
Oh, good.
Let's see here. First up, EA is openly discussing putting ads in AAA games. I
don't give EA money.
I can't.
I know there's a lot of people who are fans of their games, and that's great. But please, just pirate them.
I can't. I just fucking can't. I got to be honest. Yeah. I've not bought like a new $70 AAA day and date release game in, I don't know. I actually think the last one I bought was Like a Dragon Ishin was the last one I bought. Like paid full price day it came out. I am kind of shocked they don't already have ads in their AAA games. I'm to be honest.
Well, some of them do. They've had product placement and stuff like that, but they're talking about full-on commercial breaks.
Excuse you?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be like playing whatever EA bullshit 2025, and they're going to be like, "No, a word from our sponsors."
Essentially, yeah. From what I read, they're phrasing it as if it were going to be on loading screens or something. Now that we finally have consoles without loading screens. So they're going to start padding loading screens to fit more ads in, right? Like we know that that's what's going to... The same way that when they started adding additional DLC content, but then everyone promised, all the game companies promised, that they weren't cutting content out of the full experience of the original game to provide day one DLC. This is separate content we made in a separate building with a separate team on a separate timeline. We didn't make it all at once and then just cut a bunch of it out to charge you for it. No. We didn't do that. And then now they're like, well, of course we do that. Like, we're not stupid. And we're like, well, hold on. You fucking said you weren't. You said there wouldn't be on-disc DLC, you guys. No, that was the previous CEO who said that.
Yeah. And they're like, well, we got rid of the discs, so now we can do whatever we fucking want.
Yeah.
Fuck us, I guess.
Yeah.
Developer WiseGuy has developed and released a tool to decompile N64 ROMs into native PC ports. Yes. Proof of concept tests show native ports of Majora's Mask, Banjo-Kazooie, and Rocket Robot on Wheels. This is very exciting news.
Yes.
I'm sure Nintendo cannot fucking wait to find a way to shut this down.
Right.
But this also means that the tool is out there, and we should see, because here, like, having just a native PC port of an N64 game is good to begin with.
Right.
But
because N64 emulation is still kind of wonky.
It's still kind of wonky, and then there's also just some system level bullshit that the N64 platform introduces, like system level anti-aliasing. Mm-hmm. So this is cool and exciting to see, but it opening the door for sophisticated, like Super Mario 64 PC port level versions of some of these games is really exciting. We could start to see some real fan remasters.
And the initial tool that they released will do both Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, which we already had an Ocarina of Time PC port, but this is just a faster way to get to it without somebody manually decompiling it.
Right.
And then the Banjo-Kazooie one will do Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. So it's neat to see that not only is it available, but it's already available for multiple titles. And the N64 library is nowhere near as big as its contemporaries. So it probably won't be too long before we see the entire library decompiled.
Yeah. A fan port of Super Mario 64 is being developed for the GBA because why not?
That's ambitious. I'll give it that.
It is ambitious. That is true.
Already looks pretty impressive for the GBA, which
isn't saying a ton.
No, it's not saying a lot.
Yeah. A 4-player fan-made remake of Streets of Rage 2 has been released for PC and Android, supports widescreen bug fixes and online multiplayer, and because it's a Sega property, has a chance of not being instantaneously shut down and everyone involved sued into complete oblivion.
Yeah, it's been almost 2 weeks and it's still up there. You can still get it.
There you go.
The only thing that is worrying me that I think Sega would come after is the title screen still says copyright Sega and Yuzo Koshiro, but then adds themselves as an additional copyright.
For people releasing fan projects, don't do it that way.
Right?
It's not. You need to divest yourself of any ownership of the everything in that section.
Yeah.
A new tool has been released for modded 3DS units that allows PC emulators to wirelessly play games from networked 3DS units.
Yeah, which
is neat, hyper specific, but for the people that want that, really cool.
Yeah, so you don't have to dump your ROMs anymore. You can just play them right off of your 3DS.
Yeah,
which gives Nintendo one less thing to complain about, though they're still going to complain about it.
Oh yeah, they'll find a way. NetEase's Marvel Rivals, which is a
mobile game, I believe.
A mobile trading card game based on Marvel properties, included language in the terms of service stating that users could not disparage the game on public forums, and walked it back after the backlash stating that it was, quote, misleading language.
Did you read the original language?
I don't know.
It's not even a little misleading.
Yeah, it's not like it was kind of like, oh, well, this kind of seems like it means this. It's like, yeah, you can't say bad shit. You're like,
it was explicit language.
Kudos to, because this is my concern, is I think there are a lot of terms of service like this going around.
Yeah.
And this is why content creators need a union of some kind, because if you're out there, you're making your living on Twitch or YouTube or whatever, God help you, right?
Yeah, right.
Then something like this, like, I guess my point is, like, I could see people taking the paycheck and agreeing to the terms of service because this is their livelihood.
Right.
And they don't have the bargaining power to come back at a company, like Disney and be like, hey, you need to get your fucking Marvel Rivals shit in order because
or
this
NetEase
is...
for that matter.
Really it was NetEase, right? But, if you want to go to the top, then it's unfortunate. I'm sure there's more of this going around. This one just got some attention.
And while we're on the topic of terms of service that are awful and bad, there is a website out there, tosdr.org, which is Terms of Service Didn't Read, that just summarizes terms of services for various services. So if there's anything you're signing up for from PlayStation and Nintendo or whatever, you can kind of get a quick summary of their terms of services to know exactly what you have already agreed to by even using it.
Yeah. Square Enix claims they will be aggressively pursuing a multi-platform strategy and confirms layoffs in the US and EU. So, what I don't understand is, why are they saying this like they just now realized there are multiple game consoles and that taking a big sack of cash for timed exclusivity hurts sales?
So this is like, I think, the 8th time Square Enix has suddenly realized that multi-platform might be profitable.
Since like, what, 2000?
At least. The first time I remember hearing them say it was when the Square Enix merger happened in 2004, and they were like, oh, we'll make games for Sony and Nintendo platforms now.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, when they started making Xbox 360 games, before, walking it back over and over and over again. So I imagine this will last until the next time Sony or Epic offers them a giant sack of money.
I think what gets me the most about the AAA game industry, EA, Square Enix, Ubisoft, all of them, is the duplicity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're literally just standing up in front of, like, government officials, regulatory bodies, shareholders, and just saying shit.
Right.
They're just saying shit. Like, if this was any other industry, you would get in trouble for it. Like, you can't just go up and say shit.
A lot of the media industry seems to just say shit these days.
I guess I was thinking more like from an investor standpoint. Like, if you go in front of your investors and you just say shit, you can get in trouble for it because here's the thing, there's money involved. Right. And when there's money involved, we have all kinds of regulations, right?
Well, it helps that the people investing in these companies have no idea how technology works.
Oh, yeah, right.
So most of the technology industry can just say that their revolutionary AI will,
it's going to synergize everything, Saturn.
Right.
Everything's going to be synergized. Finally, their power beads are paying off. Atari's 50th anniversary Atari XP collection was shipped to users with 2 of its 10 games physically not functioning on actual hardware. For reference, the set retailed for $1,000.
Yeah, so that's $200 of your $1,000 in the toilet.
Atari's customer support initially stated that they could not replace broken carts. I don't know. For anyone wanting to go into manufacturing anything, you put in a manufacturing buffer to account for returns, lost goods, damaged products, and defective items.
The problem was their buffer was also defective.
God damn it. They did offer partial refunds if users shipped back the boxes for those games, leaving the $1,000 collection incomplete because it was like in a big box set.
Yeah, it was a big box set.
So you have 2 big slots empty.
Yeah.
Atari has since reversed and stated they will replace any non-functioning carts, presumably due to backlash.
Yes.
And then previous Atari XP releases featured PCBs installed backward in cartridge shells.
So you could just pop them open, swap it around, and put it into your system and it would work, as long as you don't mind ripping open your collector's edition cartridge.
When we started this show, it was companies like Hyperkin and AtGames that we made fun of for shit like this.
Right.
Random companies that were basically using the cheapest manufacturing they could to shit out nostalgic cash grabs that would occasionally be interesting or fun, but quality control was an issue.
And then slowly they started licensing them, and then it was still those shit companies, but they had a proper licensing.
Does Atari know that they made the Atari?
Right.
Like, it's them. They're the ones that did. They have the documentation.
In fairness, the current Atari is not that Atari.
True,
There's
but
been
they
like
gotta
80
have that
companies
shit
along the way.
On file somewhere, man. Like, how do you?
Even if they don't, it's on the internet.
True.
Like everyone's been reverse engineering the Atari since the Atari. Like, that was the whole Activision thing, was they reverse engineered the Atari. People know how to make this shit.
Yeah.
And it's really cheap, basic old tech too. This is 50-year-old technology.
Yeah,
this isn't like cutting edge shit.
Mega Man creator Akira Kitamura says that Mega Man 2's bubble lead weapon is in fact pronounced as the verb lead, not as the noun led.
I disagree. I think he is wrong and dumb. It has always been bubble lead because it is a weapon.
Wasn't the argument that it goes out in front of you like it?
That is what he
but
says. Yes,
isn't that what all of Mega Man's weapons do?
Yes, correct.
They all go in front of you.
This is just like the GIF thing all over again.
This feels like Sonic's shoes all over again. Is what it fucking feels like. It's red for the love we have for our fans. Like, no, it fucking isn't. You fucking liars.
So maybe this is what he had originally intended.
Sure,
but the fan base has spoken.
Yeah. Alleyway Baseball and Super Mario Land have been added to NSO's Game Boy lineup in case you want to be bored in 30 minutes.
Alleyway isn't bad.
A lot of things aren't bad.
Yeah. I did play a lot of Game Boy Baseball because it was one of the few cartridges that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that it speaks to Super Mario Land's quality that it was not a launch game on Nintendo Switch Online. It is now finally available because they didn't want to lead with this. They didn't want people to think this is what Mario is like.
Yeah. What a wet fucking fart of releases. Like, again, I think none of these games are, well, I don't want to rehash Super Mario Land. I'm not relitigating this. I think none of the three of these are really bad games, and there are really bad Game Boy games,
right,
but
absolutely.
It's nothing exciting here, man.
Yeah,
Come on, give us something exciting.
Pretty bland lineup here.
Monkey Island creator Ron Gilbert says he's working on a Zelda-style game, which could kind of mean anything, because that's broad.
He seemed to have implied a 2D Zelda-style game.
Okay, all right. 2D top-down Zelda-style game?
I think he said something, it was Zelda meets Diablo meets Thimbleweed Park, which means nothing to me.
Yeah, those are just words.
Yes.
You might as well say it also meets the Partridge Family and ice cream. I don't know how that all goes together.
It is a Souls-like disaster.
Yeah, it's a Souls-like roguelite with puzzle elements visual novel.
Yeah.
Microsoft announced a new modular accessibility controller named Proteus from developer BioWave, alongside a revision of their existing Xbox adaptive controller. And existing adaptive controllers will receive a firmware update, giving them all the functionality of the new revision, this is good.
Yes.
Something they should have done when the series released.
Yeah.
I think.
But at least existing owners don't have to buy it again, which is great.
True. That's good. That's good to see. Yeah.
Making things more available to more people, also great.
Yeah.
This is one of the few things that I give Microsoft just open praise for is this one. They're going to do dumb, stupid shit that I'm going to criticize them for any minute now. But their accessibility is excellent.
Yes.
Did you see the Proteus controller?
It is weird as hell.
Right? It's like these little rounded cubes that connect, and you can change out their face plates and shit. But if it makes even one more person able to play games, that's
totally
great. And I'm all for it.
For the company that keeps their fucking Bluetooth protocol completely locked down and doesn't let people make wireless accessories, they sure do have some accessible controller options.
Right.
I can't reconcile that, but what the fuck ever, I guess.
Yeah.
Which brings us, no, never mind, it doesn't. There's more news. There's one more. I almost missed it. Emulator developer Implicit Conversions inadvertently leaked on their website that they're helping Sony develop a PS2 emulator for the PS5. Do they not have one already?
Kind of. There was a PS2 emulator on the PS4, which is playable on the PS5. But this implies that there is a new PS5 specific one, which a lot of people have taken to mean that Star Wars: The Clone Wars is coming to PS Plus. It feels like they skipped a step, but that seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, they skipped the question mark step, and they moved on to profit.
Yeah. But we'll see. Hopefully it is better than the PS2 emulator that was on the PS4, because Star Ocean 3 on PS2 or on PS4 would occasionally just crash and delete all your save data.
Oh, that's nice. It's not a very long game though, right? So it's fine.
I was like 45 hours in, which was like a third of the way when it just erased all of my data.
Well, that does now bring us to our topic at hand.
Yeah.
Which is Rare, the studio behind hits like Digger T Rock and Grabbed by the Ghoulies. Grabbed by the Ghoulies was the latest Xbox game I saw on a store shelf in Walmart. I mean, that was on shelves in Walmart until like 2017.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't know. It was the only one.
And
I kept
bought it.
I kept almost buying it because I was like, fuck, man, like I feel like I have to buy it. It made me think about like how you could buy like a Mega Man Anniversary Collection new on Amazon until like 2015 for GameCube.
Until like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Rare was founded in 1982 as Ashby Computers and Graphics Limited in Ashby de la Zouch, Leicestershire, England. Leicestershire, England. I got it right.
Definitely
You know what? I'm just glad I wasn't messing up Japanese words this time. So every other countries can get it. England got it this time. We're gonna get everybody.
And they speak the same language as us.
Allegedly. You say that, but I'm not sold.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on the idea.
Yeah, we have some people in our chat from the UK, and we are constantly learning of how different our mutual language is.
Yes, what the most recent one was they were talking about acne, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I my friend had spots when they were a teenager," and we were like, "Oh." Like Daffy Duck in that one episode, they got spots, and they're like, no, like pimples. And we're like, oh, acne. And they're like, yeah, spots. And I was like, what? I've never fucking heard that in my life.
That is a weird one to us.
What's weird is both you and I have watched a large amount of British television.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And none of it. Yeah,
there are a lot of Britishisms I've picked up from those things.
Sure, there's some.
Not that.
There's some. Yeah. There's the big ones that you pick up pretty quick. But then things like spots, like it's so weird.
It makes me realize that growing up, all the American TV I watched always had the very special episode about all these teenage problems like acne.
Yeah.
And I never once saw a British program. I don't know that I saw a British program with teenagers in it now that I think about it.
That's true. Yeah.
Like all the imported British television I got was very specifically adults.
In retrospect, it could also be that they just brought over the stuff that would most easily translate to Americans. So I'm sure that this stuff was covered, but we just didn't see it because we got the most America-friendly version.
Yeah.
So that we wouldn't lose our minds and spill our freedom fries on the ground, leaping out of our easy chair.
Right.
Yelling about how confused we are.
Yeah. That's what we do.
Knock over our Bud Light, accidentally trip over all our shotguns.
And our beer hat will just fall right off of our head.
I did learn that apparently there's it is, I guess a stereotype or, that Americans eat dinner very early.
They were saying late.
We eat it late.
They're saying that it was like 8 to 10 p.m.
Man, that's way too late. Like,
right?
If I have something to do the next day, I'm in bed by 11:30. I don't want to be eating dinner at 10 o'clock at night. That's insane.
Yeah, I need a couple hours to digest.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, we're talking, we have a topic. We're talking about things. They were reestablished as Rare in 1985. As far as first encounters, Battletoads and Donkey Kong Country specifically were kind of my introductions to Rare, and I went on to greatly enjoy their best in 64 game, which is GoldenEye. And
true.
Anyone who thinks otherwise is wrong.
That's true. All of that is correct. Yeah.
I also greatly enjoyed the legendary title Conker's Bad Fur Day. I don't think I ever played the single player ever, but I played the multiplayer all of the time.
Conker's Bad Fur Day is probably the best game that I've played with a talking poo in it.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. This is
probably.
I can't think of any other talking shit.
It's that and South Park: The Fractured Butthole. Those two.
It's pretty much it. Yeah.
Are the best in that category. I think my introduction to Rare was probably RC Pro-Am.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also would pretty regularly rent that and Cobra Triangle and Battletoads. But I don't know that I explicitly associated the name Rare with the company until Donkey Kong Country, just because the prominent logo at the beginning. So that was probably when I noticed them anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so our story kind of starts with a bit of name confusion.
Yeah.
Because, as we said, the company was founded as Ashby Computer and Graphics. but they were known as Ultimate Play the Game.
Yeah, which is a ridiculous name.
And so Ultimate Play the Game, which also their logo is kick-ass. I don't know if you saw it on Wikipedia. It's like purple mottled background, and then the words are like metal with like green reflections.
It's very 80s.
Ultimate Play the Game. For whatever reason, that's the name they published video games under. So the name of the company was legally Ashby Computers and Graphics, but then the things came out as Ultimate Play the Game. So Saturn, you want to tell us about the early days of Ultimate Play the Game, which the section which you entitled Ultimate Talk About the History.
I felt like it was appropriate. So you have co-founders Chris and Tim Stamper, who are basically the protagonists of this story. They worked with a guy named John Lathbury at a previous company, Associated Leisure, as well as Xylec Electronics, which, man, those are some 80s electronics names right there.
Associated Leisure.
Right? The Associated Leisure sounds like an adult film company.
It does, yeah. Yep, it does. I'll give you that.
And at both of those companies, they had contributed to arcade games that would mostly be published by other larger publishers like Konami and Sega. One article that I found in Commodore User magazine claimed that they had worked on Konami's Gyrus, though I have found no information from Konami confirming that anything in Gyrus was outsourced.
Although it wouldn't be that weird for Konami to not say who did a thing. So, especially
a Japanese game company in the 80s.
Definitely.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. And they wanted to make their own decisions regarding future games, so they teamed up with Carol Ward, who would end up being Tim Stamper's wife, to form a new company that they ultimately called Ultimate Play the Game.
Ultimate Play the Game.
Which is just such a weird name. Initially,
I think what weirds me out about the name the most is that there's no colon.
Yeah.
I feel like they wants to have a colon after Ultimate. Ultimate colon, play the game.
Yeah, it feels like an instruction, but grammatically it doesn't make sense.
It's very strange. And
it feels like it should be like the final form of the name. Like it should have been Play the Game, then later Super Play the Game, and then finally Ultimate Play the Game.
Yeah. And then the Stampers had worked they worked on arcade machines prior, right?
It was mostly those arcade games like Gyrus.
Yeah. Allegedly Gyrus.
Yeah, allegedly Gyrus. And then initially with Ultimate Play the Game, they were mostly still working on arcade conversions just to make some money. They would either convert existing arcade cabinets into other machines or basic conversions of arcade games into home ports.
Yeah.
But their first original release was Jetpack for the 16K model ZX Spectrum in May of 83. Which would go on to sell over 300,000 copies, making the studio more than £1 million.
Oh, I'm sorry. Capcom considers those sales numbers to be a failure. So.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not a failure.
Didn't sell more than Resident Evil 5, so it's a failure. That's the rule.
Square Enix considers this to be a failure.
I do love the small numbers on. I know that it always comes up. We're like, oh, only 900,000. It's always crazy to me. Always crazy.
I mean, in perspective, this is basically a game that was sold to one country in one region in one period of time.
Very true. On one very specific model,
right?
Specifically the 16K model of the ZX Spectrum.
Right. Yeah. So the numbers were incredibly good for the time, for this market, especially for a small studio.
Yeah.
And they continued to see success with future releases. They won the Golden Joystick Award in 83 and 84 for Best Software House.
I didn't know the Golden Joystick Award was that old.
Yeah, it was a UK specific thing at the time.
I mean, I'd heard about it. I just didn't realize they were doing it way back when.
Right?
Like, holy cow.
I was surprised to find out that, one, that it started so long ago, and two, that it is still running.
Yeah.
There was a gap where they weren't doing it in the 90s, I believe, but they're still going.
Yeah.
They also won Game of the Year for Jetpack and for Night Lore.
Mm-hmm.
And rumors began to crop up in British games media of the time that the studio was being targeted for a buyout by Ocean, who was a huge UK studio who also published internationally. But instead, in '85, the Stamper Brothers decided to sell a stake of the company to U.S. Gold, who was a competitor to Ocean. Who would
I remember
take
U.S.
over.
Gold.
Oh yeah,
I definitely remember U.S. Gold.
Yeah, you might remember them for some of their awful ports of Capcom's games to PC.
Yep, maybe.
And U.S. Gold would go on to produce future games using the Ultimate Play the Game label after the Stampers and the rest of the team left the company.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us to the establishment proper of Rare in '85.
Yeah. So around that time, they decided that they were a little worried that they would never be able to grow beyond the UK if they stuck to the ZX Spectrum and very UK-centric microcomputers. So they decided to step away from Ultimate and eventually just sell the company to US Gold as they started looking at other platforms. And specifically, they had imported a Famicom in '85 and reverse engineered the console to be able to produce games for the Famicom.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, this was still, right around the time the NES was releasing in the West and the Famicom was getting big in Japan. Nintendo had been publicly claiming that the Famicom was impossible to reverse engineer, which for any electronics companies, never say that about anything.
I love that all these years later, we learned that the way to get around their copy protection is to take a screwdriver and bust a pin off of one chip.
Well, that was on the NES. The Famicom didn't even require that.
Did it not?
No, there was no TINNES chip in the Famicom. There was all kinds of unlicensed carts for the Famicom everywhere.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So Rare sent some tech demos to Nintendo showing their games running on the Famicom that they had reverse engineered.
Which what a ballsy move,
right?
To be like, hey, Japanese company, look, we did reverse engineer your shit, and here's some stuff we made for it,
right? And Nintendo of America's Minoru Arakawa met the team in person to see their work, to make sure that this wasn't just like some doctored footage. And they were so impressed with the reverse engineering that Nintendo gave the group, quote, an unlimited budget to make whatever game they wanted for Famicom. And the team wisely saw that this was an unlimited budget and decided to make as many games as they possibly could as long as this funding was available.
They made a lot.
Oh, yeah. They ended up producing over 60 NES and Game Boy games with this unlimited budget.
Yeah. It's so it's insane.
Yeah.
A lot of these are trash games.
Yes, a lot of licensed trash.
A lot of licensed stuff. They did Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Which is one of my all-time favorite piece of shit LJN games.
Yeah.
They did the Port of Arch Rivals. They did there's just a ton. There's a ton of shit in the list. I mean, there's good stuff. You got your Battletoads.
Right. I think they did 3 Wheel of Fortune games on NES.
I saw they did Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Anticipation, which I want to talk about Anticipation for a minute, because this is the only time we're ever going to get to talk about it on this show. Anticipation has the stupidest cover art of any NES game ever
just
released.
A bunch of adults staring at a camera.
2 of them at the bottom are playing with controllers.
Yeah, that's something.
And everyone else is just, and there's this one lady. So in the corner of the box, it says, party fun for all ages. And there's a lady right over it with her mouth all the way open in a big O, looking shocked as possible. And every time I would be out retro game shopping back when you could like go to a store and do that and spend $10 and get 12 NES games.
Right.
This was one that I would always see and be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Who the fuck wants this?
Yeah, I remember they had it at my local rental store when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And anytime that I would see it, I would have no idea what the fuck it is, because it's just a bunch of grown-ass adults staring at the camera as if they're supposed to be looking at a TV.
Yeah.
And second, the thing that always caught me about it was underneath the name of the game, Anticipation, was just the entire alphabet printed out for some reason.
Yeah, what? What
And I would
is
just-
that?
I would just have, like, I would just be very confused as to why they felt the need to print the entire alphabet,
And then right below that it says Nintendo's first video board game.
which, for the record, Monopoly was already on NES. By Rare.
What fascinates me about all these like trash NES and Game Boy games is David Wise, who was a composer that worked on, people know him for Donkey Kong Country, right?
Yeah.
But he worked with Rare and he composed like all of these games.
A lot of them, yeah.
And so a lot of these garbage ass NES games that they shitted out with their unlimited budget
Yeah.
have awesome music.
Right?
Like, I'm sorry, Beetlejuice has a great soundtrack. It's fucking
Barely playable.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Marble Madness is another absolute classic.
yeah.
Although I imagine I don't think they did the original music, or if
No,
I've
because
never
it's
played
just
the.
conversion of Atari
Yeah.
Games' original arcade version.
But still, converting it so that it sounds good on
Yeah.
a system is the thing, as a lot of poor Genesis ports will tell us with their ridiculous farty audio. So it's just funny that like a lot of these like shitty NES games, like I wonder how rockin' the tunes are in anticipation.
All right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I had found a YouTube video years ago where somebody was praising the soundtrack of Anticipation. And they're like, this game is trash, but listen to this. So yeah, it's a strange little rabbit hole to go down all of Rare's trash NES shovelware.
and dig out all of the awesome soundtracks that they have hidden away in here. I don't remember what Snake Rattle and Roll sounded like, but I want to say it had a good
that
one too. I think
it has
I
a
think
good
that one
soundtrack.
had a good
I like
soundtrack
Snake Rattle
for
and Roll.
sure.
So their first NES game they released was Slalom, which for anyone who remembers is a black box NES game, which was also the first officially licensed Famicom or NES game ever developed outside of Japan.
Oh, because they also did a Versus Slalom on the Versus system.
Yes, on the arcade, yeah.
So they did that, and
Which
then
actually
regular
released
Slalom.
before Slalom.
Yeah. Good old Slalom.
Slalom is basically ski-free but worse.
Okay, yeah. Is there still a Yeti that eats you?
No.
Oh, well, kind of ruins the fun then, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little
They
bit.
just want you to ski good. There's not threat of being devoured by a Yeti.
You can still crash.
It's not the same. I want a Yeti. You think there's a ROM hack for Slalom where someone adds a Yeti?
Oh man, I hope so. If not, somebody get on that.
Just a terrifying jaundice-eyed monster rushing out of the woods and eating
Right.
you?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
So as they were starting to get into their NES groove and publishing some trash shovelware, they were upset that a lot of the later games that US Gold was releasing under the Ultimate Play the Game label were reviewing very poorly, as opposed to their games that they had released under Ultimate Play the Game, which reviewed quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So the Stampers bought back their share of the company from US Gold, which also allowed them to make sequels to their prior works. And they did make an NES sequel to one of Ultimate Play the Game's games, which was Solar Jetman. On NES,
Solar Jetman. I forget about that.
which was technically a sequel to Lunar Jetman, which was a kind of sequel to Jetpack.
Yeah. I mean, you're jetting around in all of them. It's basically
Right.
the same game, right?
It's a lot of Jetpack stuff.
UK was really into jetpacks for a little while there.
Well, Rare especially was.
It was hot shit.
Yeah. And Rare had worked with a bunch of different publishers on the NES, including Nintendo themselves and TradeWest, Acclaim, EA, Sega, Mindscape, and GameTech. TradeWest most prominently because TradeWest had done Battletoads and RC Pro-Am.
Yeah.
And while many of these were licensed games or ports, they did manage to get some of their own original IP out there, like we mentioned, RC Pro-Am, Snake Rattle and Roll, Battletoads, Cobra Triangle.
Snake Rattle and Roll, which was renamed to Sneaky Snakes on the Game Boy for some reason.
And also, apparently, there was a Mega Drive port of Snake Rattle and Roll in Europe, which
Really? Did
'cause
they
that
call
was
it Sneaky Snakes there?
I don't know. It was a first party NES game here in the US, so
Yeah.
seeing a Genesis port is just bizarre to me.
Yeah. I guess Sneaky Snakes is kind of a sequel of sorts. Yeah, it's not really the same game. Interesting.
Right.
Very interesting. Anyway.
And they took on so much work during this era with their unlimited budget that they actually outsourced some of their work. Like, this was an outsourced studio outsourcing their outsourced work.
Yeah.
Including Solar Jetman and the Wizards and Warriors games were outsourced to a company called Zippo Games.
Oh, boy.
Who were later acquired by Rare and then renamed to Rare Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the Super NES was on the horizon and starting to release, they decided to slow down their production and start emphasizing quality again, which that's revolutionary after their NES run.
And it does kind of put them on an inverse trajectory to a lot of companies going from the NES into the Super Nintendo into the N64.
Right.
Because by the time we were in the late 90s, like, there was a lot of licensed trash being shit out by companies that previously were pretty legendary, you know?
Yeah. And also they kind of had this U-shaped trajectory because they started out pretty prestigious on the ZX Spectrum.
Yeah.
And then they kind of dipped in quality on the NES just to come back up for the Super NES. And they had initially, instead of getting the Super NES dev kit like would make sense, they just bought an SGI workstation. A very expensive SGI workstation.
Well, when you put out 60 games on the NES and Game Boy, you got that kind of money floating around.
Exactly. So,
well, let's talk Super Nintendo, which is really where internationally Rare became known as a quality company over a quantity company with Donkey Kong. So let's talk Donkey Kong.
Yeah, so they had their SGI workstation, which they were using to make 3D models. And they had come up with this idea of making these pretty 3D models and then turning them into sprites and playing them on the Super NES. And they showed it to Nintendo. And Nintendo was so impressed that they immediately bought a 25% stake in the company, which they later increased to 49%. And this is when they started going by Rareware.
Yeah.
And Nintendo gave them the opportunity to pick any character from the Nintendo catalog to make a CG game on the Super NES, which I don't know how accurate that is. I have a feeling that Nintendo would have put the hammer down on certain characters like Mario.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like if they're like, oh, Mario or something, they'd be like, no, we did that on CDI. No, thank you. Like,
any character but that.
Yeah, no Mario. No Mario.
But they did ultimately choose Donkey Kong. And they then started on what would become their biggest game to date. It ended up having an 18-month development cycle, which in the Super NES era is
that's long
huge.
for that era. Yeah, that's pretty long.
Oh yeah. It would Donkey Kong Country would release in late '94 to universal critical acclaim and would go on to sell 9 million copies and become the third highest selling game on the Super NES.
Yeah. So in one fell swoop, Rare redeems a lot of their reputation, creates a reputation internationally, becomes a second-party company at Nintendo, and drops one of the most legendary Nintendo titles ever released. I mean, Donkey Kong Country, like, I know we have words to say about it these days, but it is absolutely still a completely beloved title, and it remains that way.
It's never been one of my favorites on Super NES, but I think it's safe to say it kind of turned around the Super NES's fate. Internationally anyway.
Oh yeah.
It went from a system that was really struggling to compete with Sega, and then with Star Fox and Donkey Kong Country, suddenly Super NES took the lead in most countries.
Yeah.
And thanks to Nintendo's investments in the company and the success of Donkey Kong Country, Rare was able to hire enough employees to more than triple their staff to over 250 people. And that allowed them to split their focus between sequels and handheld spin-offs, as well as their next project. And their next project, they wanted to make something for the upcoming, at the time, Ultra 64.
Yeah.
And rather than a platformer, they decided to chase the competitive fighting craze, and they made Killer Instinct. And they worked with Midway on the arcade version, which was built on totally real N64 hardware, you guys. This is really what the system is going to be.
Definitely.
And,
definitely.
And then the N64 was delayed, and they needed a home port, so they managed to downport the game to the Super NES with some limitations, but still a pretty impressive port of Killer Instinct.
Impressive, kind of, as far as like a public opinion, seems middling.
At the time, it was really well received.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it has been noted for its limitations.
Like I see EGM gave it a 27.5 out of 40, which what fucking scale, EGM? My God.
Well, it's 4 people giving a 10-point scale.
I know you always explain it, and it doesn't make me feel any better about how stupid and weird it is. It's so weird, you know. Yeah, I did see a quote on Wikipedia. All game described Killer Instinct as Mortal Kombat on speed with hyperactive Barry White announcer. Just the strangest way to phrase that.
It quickly became a big thing at my school. Like, I was never super big into Killer Instinct, but I did play it a bit just because of how big it was at school, and people interrupting each other with the phrase combo breaker became the best joke for a whole summer.
I'm younger than you, and it's shocking, I know. But everyone in my age bracket, none of us ever even played Killer Instinct one time.
Weird.
No one knew it. We saw it and we were like, oh, that looks kind of like Mortal Kombat. That's an older kid game, and we just completely and utterly ignored it.
Yeah, both the Super NES and N64 Killer Instinct games got some play in my group.
Yeah. Yeah, now we
were more Capcom people than Mortal Kombat people. We also played, plenty of Mortal Kombat, but
sure.
we leaned Capcom. But Killer Instinct did make a splash for a minute, more so than SNK's games until I would say King of Fighters 99.
That's true. And I would be shocked to learn that Killer Instinct on N64 was anything other than a sales success, because I remember seeing it for sure.
Yeah, and it was a successful. It was a authentic port of Killer Instinct 2 as well, like very close to the arcade.
I think it doesn't help that the N64 Mortal Kombat game was Mortal Kombat Trilogy.
Yeah. Oh, also Mortal Kombat 4.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I forget about that
turd.
Yeah, because Mortal Kombat Trilogy on N64, if I remember right, because I didn't play Mortal Kombat either, was not well received. Am I remembering that was like it was supposed to be a shittier version of the game, and people were upset?
So here's the thing: the 64 version of Mortal Kombat Trilogy ran better than the PlayStation and Saturn versions, but it had less characters.
God damn it!
So the good part was that Shang Tsung could do his transformation into other characters, whereas on PS1 and Saturn, the memory limitations meant you could only transform into the character you were playing against.
All right.
Whereas on N64, it could transform into anybody.
Yeah.
But there were some characters missing due to cartridge space limitations.
Yeah.
So it was a thing.
Well, let's talk about their other N64 stuff because we haven't even made it to the real gold here.
Yeah. So they had some success on N64. In addition to eventually Killer Instinct Gold, they did GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day. All successful games, commercially and as far as critical reviews.
I know we all want to make fun of Donkey Kong 64, but it
also sold well.
It was critically beloved. Like, it got,
for some reason,
really good scores. I mean, it like not perfect 10s or whatever, but for a game that we kind of all sort of laugh at now.
Didn't it come with the expansion pack?
I believe so.
I think I remember that. I bought my expansion pack separately because I didn't want to buy Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah. Didn't it also come with other games? Like, couldn't you get it with like Perfect Dark or something? Like, wasn't there?
I believe there was a version of Perfect Dark that came with it as well.
But it got good reviews. I mean, not stellar, not outstanding. IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, and GameSpot gave it a 9 out of 10.
Weird.
Next Generation gave it 4 out of 5 stars. EGM gave it 27 out of 40. Famitsu gave it a 33 out of 40, and that's 90s Famitsu.
I will never forgive Donkey Kong 64 because it introduced the DK rap to the world.
Saturn, you don't like the DK rap?
No.
Even in an ironically bad way?
I will laugh at it in an ironic way, yes.
I will say I was young enough that I preferred Diddy Kong Racing to Mario Kart by a country mile. Because I was 9 when it came out, which not that 9 is too young to play Mario Kart, but Diddy Kong was just easier. and
I never got
preferred it.
around to Diddy Kong Racing until years after the fact.
It's okay.
Just by the time it had released, I had almost completely moved to PlayStation. I was barely looking at the N64.
Yeah. Perfect.
Go ahead.
Perfect Dark was a huge one in my house.
That was another one I mostly skipped on.
I played a shitload of GoldenEye single player by myself. And then
I played a lot of.
Perfect Dark came out, and me and my brother both got into Perfect Dark, and it felt so advanced. Like the way you would use different gadgets and stuff in the game. Like now it's all quaint now, right? But it felt so advanced, and I remember it felt so fast. It felt insanely fast.
Because the expansion pack, Justin.
It's obviously. And so we did Donkey Kong Country 64. My brother played. I was on GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, and me and my friend played so much Conker's Bad Fur Day multiplayer, where you play squirrels versus teddy bears.
Yep.
And you just and it's like you stab each other with swords and shoot each other with guns, and gore sprays out of your little cartoon corpse.
As we discuss this, as beloved as Rare was in this era, I think GoldenEye is the only one of their N64 games I ever played much of.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's talk Dinosaur Planet for a second, and then we'll move on to the changing of hands.
Yeah.
So
they were working on Dinosaur Planet for N64, which I believe a build of it was recently found.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the GameCube was coming out, they shifted development to the GameCube, and then Miyamoto suggested they turn it into a Star Fox game, and then it became Star Fox Adventures, which ended up being their last title with Nintendo, which it was received.
Yeah.
From what I remember when it came out, people said it was a good Zelda-style adventure game and a bad Star Fox game.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. We also forgot to mention Jet Force Gemini.
That's true. That was also on there in 64.
Which I feel shares some DNA with the GameCube Star Fox.
I could see that, yeah.
A little bit, It's aged not awesome. It's kind of hard to play now, but I feel like there's a little bit of DNA crossing boundaries there.
I can definitely see that.
Let's talk Rare leaving Nintendo, because this was... Because again, I mean, N64 came out when I'm like 10, and Rare was one of the most important and celebrated developers for the N64.
Yep.
And like outside of first party games, it's pretty much like first party games, some Pokemon Stadium games, Rare's games, and then other shit.
Shovelware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the N64 was really big and important to me when I was a kid, and seeing Rare leave Nintendo was a young heartbart for me. Like, it's one of the first times that I remember being like, "What? No!"
And I'd mentioned earlier the N64 doesn't have a ton of games. There's
no
grand total worldwide 388 games.
It's low
compared to the PS1's 7,918 games.
It's insane.
So the fact that so many of the notable games on the system were Rare and Nintendo really speaks to how important Rare was on the system.
Yeah.
And important to Nintendo's whole strategy during the N64 era.
It's mind-boggling that they didn't fight to keep Rare more than they did.
Yeah. So what was happening was, especially with what would become Star Fox Adventures, the cost of development was just getting enormous as these new consoles were coming out and their new technology and all this. Rare was struggling to keep up with development costs, and they were kind of petitioning Nintendo to buy the studio outright, because at the time Nintendo still only owned 49% of Rare.
Yeah.
So Rare was still an independent studio, and they were just really wanting Nintendo to finish buying the company so that they would have more budget.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. And every time that they tried to pitch it, Nintendo wouldn't budge. So they started looking elsewhere. They started accepting outside bids, specifically from Activision and Microsoft. And only once Activision and Microsoft had made their bids did Nintendo suddenly start making serious bids to buy the company.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost. They lost to Microsoft. Microsoft made the bigger bid. And so it was September of 2002 about a little under a year after the GameCube came out, that Microsoft purchased Rare for $375 million, which is $651 million adjusted for inflation, which seems like a deal compared to what they've been spending on everything else lately.
Yeah, definitely.
And despite them being a first-party Xbox studio, Microsoft allowed Rare to sign a deal with THQ to continue to publish Rare's games on GBA, because they were working on several GBA games at the time of purchase because they were cheaper to produce than console games, and the budget was the issue.
I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have gotten It's Mr. Pants.
It's Mr. Pants, the breakthrough GBA Rareware game. I almost bought It's Mr. Pants when it came out.
Because it's so stupid looking?
Just because it's so stupid looking. Because I was like,
don't even know what the fucking game is about.
I was like, this is a Microsoft GBA game called It's Mr. Pants. I think I need to get it. And then I never did because I wasn't about to spend $30 on It's Mr. Pants.
Man.
So Rare's first game for Xbox was Grabbed by the Ghoulies.
Tough sell.
Which always sounded like it was a game about grabbing someone by their nuts.
Yeah,
like,
obviously.
We can all agree that that's what they were going for, right?
Definitely. Every time I get hit in the nuts, I'm like, oh, they got me right in the ghoulies.
Right.
Every time.
So yeah, Grabbed by the Ghoulies had mediocre reviews and was considered one of Rare's worst games in years, which is not how you want to debut on your new owner's platform.
This is true.
And their only other release on the Xbox was the remake of Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, which I played some of that.
It was a good port.
A little bit of that.
It was censored compared to its N64 original.
Yes, but I remember not caring about that because we were in it for the multiplayer. But if I remember right, the multiplayer was changed in such a way that we didn't like it as much. I don't remember what they changed.
It was a little more Haloized, and it had Xbox Live compatibility.
Yeah.
I think it had some new game modes or something, or removed something. I don't remember exactly. I only ever played the single player.
Yeah. Which, for all the money they spent to because these are the only two Xbox games they got.
Yeah. Those two.
Which granted, they sale didn't go through till September of 2002.
Right. So this was almost a year after the GameCube and Xbox released.
But then Xbox 360, we saw a lot more stuff.
Right. Yeah, they became quite a bit more prominent.
Cameo Elements of Power and Perfect Dark Zero both being Rare and launch titles for the 360. Even though neither of those games seem particularly celebrated today, it was a big get for 360 launch.
Yeah.
It really. I remember people that were buying the 360 just for a new Perfect Dark. Which I'm sorry.
I felt like it legitimized
that,
the launch of the system a little more, just having those Rare games there.
Because what you have? You had Dead or Alive 3? Was it Dead or Alive 3?
I think 3 was original Xbox.
So Dead or Alive 4. You had Dead or Alive. You had Call of Duty 3. You had Perfect Dark Zero. You had Cameo Elements of Power. And that's kind of it. What else was there? Not much, But it added some needed diversity. I knew a lot of people were at that time because this is me now becoming a teenager, and I played Perfect Dark when I was a kid, and so I was excited to see Perfect Dark return. They did the Viva Pinata games on 360, which are not remembered as well as they should be because they're really fun.
And they even got a cartoon spinoff.
They did. They seemed to want it to be a thing for a little bit, and then
Microsoft let it die as soon as they bought Minecraft.
And then they released a terrible Banjo-Kazooie game.
Yeah, Nuts and Bolts, I think it is.
Nuts and Bolts. That was... it was a cool idea.
I never even
It was a cool idea where you build little vehicles, and I'm like, that's neat, but it just didn't...
From what I've heard, it didn't feel like Banjo-Kazooie at all.
No, it did not. And then they got funneled into Kinect shit for a little while there.
Right. Yeah. That was really the unfortunate part when Microsoft basically forced Rare to become a Kinect studio. It really felt like a return to form to their NES shovelware days.
It kind of did, and it kind of feels like that now still, because like sure, I don't know. They seem to be fixing their reputation, but Killer Instinct on Xbox One was great. Rare Replay was pretty celebrated. They're doing Sea of Thieves. Like they're still actively doing it.
Pretty successful too.
Yeah, it's doing well.
I don't know who's buying it, but it seems to be successful.
And they've got Everwild on the horizon. So
yeah, and that Battletoads remake.
Yeah, Battletoads. I forget about that. I feel like that kind of came and went.
Yeah. Now, granted, the Killer Instinct reboot was not Rare.
Was it not?
No, that was Double Helix made that.
Oh, I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. The Battletoads remake was Rare. It feels like since Rare Replay released, Microsoft has let Rare out of Kinect jail, and they're allowed to actually make games again.
Yeah.
But they're going pretty slow at it. They seem to be being a little more methodical now, like going back to that Super NES N64 mindset of not just shoveling stuff out, but rather taking their time with it. And we'll see how Everwild reviews. If that is reviewed well, I think that we might be able to say that they're on a resurgence.
Yeah.
But
then also in the last decade, the Stampers have left. They left in 2007, right?
Right. Yeah. So they left Rare, and they specifically left because they were upset with Microsoft's lack of advertising for Viva Pinata, which
I can't blame them. Viva Pinata was really cool.
Yeah, and it feels like that was a relatively well advertised Xbox exclusive.
I feel like it was. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like they missed the mark as far as getting an actual audience for Viva Pinata.
Yeah. As far as I could tell now, according to Wikipedia anyway, they're now investing in a mobile game studio run by one of their sons, and so they do mobile games now, I guess. There you go.
It's good to see that they're still doing something.
True, or at least it's one of their sons is, and they're investing money in it.
That's something.
As far as legacy, it's hard. Rare is an N64 company to me.
Yeah.
Just because of my age bracket. Like, obviously I played Donkey Kong Country, but outside of the few megaton first party Nintendo games, they were the other company on N64 making games.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what they have always remained in my mind, is a Nintendo company, despite being owned by Microsoft now. So it's
they still got Banjo-Kazooie and Smash Brothers.
True.
And it's on Nintendo Switch Online as well. So
still, I still don't think of Rare as a Microsoft company. They are the N64 company for me, and so I think they're well remembered for their N64 stuff. I think they continue to make pretty celebrated stuff, so they're still around. As far as legacy, I think we're in the middle of them kind of earning their reputation back. Yeah.
I'm a little mixed on them because none of their games have really been things that I love. Like some of their original NES stuff, the non-licensed, non-shovelware stuff, I enjoy.
Yeah.
But I've never been huge in Donkey Kong Country. I've never been huge in any of their N64 games. So I feel like from an outside perspective, just observing the studio, seeing other people become huge fans of them and then just kind of walking away, I feel like they peaked in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to... I am hopeful that they can come back right now.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be an uphill struggle.
There's also the question of without the Stampers, without the vision of being semi-independent, without that autonomy, how much of Rare is just going to
left?
Has either already become or is becoming just another wing of Microsoft,
right? And and a lot of their big names, in addition to the Stampers, the guys behind Banjo-Kazooie left and made Yooka-Laylee.
Yeah.
And people behind Perfect Dark and GoldenEye left and made Free Radical and the Time Splitters games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question of what's even left there aside from some IP.
Yeah. Is David Wise isn't still with the company, is he?
I don't think so. I think he was contract even at the time.
Oh yeah, I guess
I'm not
guess he
certain
would
of
be.
that,
I
though.
know he went and he worked on Ukulele.
Yeah.
And Snake Pass. It looks like he came back and did some music for Battletoads.
That's good.
You know, so yeah, like having a lot of the big names missing, being absorbed by Microsoft. There's always the question of like, will they, with time and with releases, lose their identity a little
Right.
bit? You know, I think that's always the concern.
If they
whenever
haven't already.
Yeah, if they haven't, you know, because a lot of times, like, you can kind of feel when a game company that gets absorbed has sort of lost its identity, but then they're kind of still sort of trying to mildly brand something as that, you know,
Right. Yeah.
as the company that it's supposed to be from. So I don't know. It's weird to end on a note that's like, yeah, well, they're still there, I guess. But they kind of are. They're just here. You know, Microsoft owns them. They're there. A lot of the big names have gone, but hopefully there are still people doing meaningful work at Rare and keeping Rare's unique identity.
And the reputation that Sea of Thieves has had in recent years at least makes it seem like there are some people with some real love for gaming and for the company within Rare.
Yeah, it's not the game for me because it's PvP with no option to turn it off, and that's
right.
Pass.
It's not a game for me either, but it does seem to be getting some positive attention.
Oh yeah, and Everwild. I'll say this: Everwild does look cool.
Yeah.
I think it'll be neat to see what happens with that title and where Rare goes from here.
Did you ever play Captain Skyhawk on NES?
Oh my God, that sounds familiar. Did that have an accompanying cartoon or something? Or was it licensed?
I don't think it was licensed. But
I don't remember it, but the name sounds really familiar.
It's not great, but it was another one of their shovelware games on NES with a really nice soundtrack.
Yeah. Well, you know what else isn't great? But we shovel stuff out onto it anyway. It's our Patreon at patreon.com/retrowarriors, where you can get wonderful, definitely great things like uncut versions of this show and Talking Wizards.
And whatever else we can shovel out.
Whatever else we want to fucking shovel out there. Just, you call us Rare on the NES because we're just shoveling shit. I'm not good at selling myself. They say you have to sell yourself, but I'm not good at it.
You just really wanted to make a shovel pun, and it only made things worse.
It has exacerbated the situation. We want to thank the following patrons for their kind money that they give us, starting with STG the Mr. Guy,
and the New Craft,
David Svihel,
Amarlian,
Ever see a sandwich take a bite out of you?
Michael Castro,
I'm not giving my name to a machine,
Burger Champ,
Viable Patron Metroid Prime,
and Marlo221
have all given us money, some of them more than once. And
That's so nice of them.
You too can give us money that we'll spend on Nerf guns and Steam sales. And then you will have funded those things, and you know in your heart that you've done good in the world.
You done good.
And blenders. I bought a new blender, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I broke my old one, so it's
make some salsa.
I could make salsa. I haven't made salsa in it yet. I should. That's a good idea. I've been making smoothies.
Oh, that's good too.
Nice, good smoothie. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, and as always, let us cling together.